He said, this is absolute proof that the Dominion machines were rigged. The report means that I'm going to have a second term. I was somewhat demoralized because I thought, boy, if he really believes this stuff, he has, lost contact with he's become detached from reality if he really believes this stuff.
That was Trump's former Attorney General William Barr, and today did mark the second day of hearings by the House Select Committee investigating January 6th and the riots that took place on that day. Now, the first day of hearings focused primarily on the riots and rioters themselves. Today, the focus was on Trump administration officials, campaign officials, and what they were telling Trump behind the scenes. And there were really two main themes here. The first was the fact that everyone around Trump thought he was a lunatic, save for the other lunatics like Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani. And the second half of it focused on how Trump used the so-called big lie to essentially con and scam money away from his own supporters to the tune of $250 million. Let's focus on what everyone around him was telling him as he was believing all of these election lies, beginning with what Rudy Giuliani was advising him to do on the night of the election prior to all the votes being counted. Of course, there were many mail-in ballots and Trump didn't really want to count those ballots. So what did Rudy Giuliani tell him to do? Let's take a look.
Anyone in that conversation who, in your observation, had too much to drink?
Like Mayor Giuliani, there were suggestions by, I believe it was Mayor Giuliani, to go and declare victory and say that we'd won it outright.
It was far too early to be making any calls like that. Ballots were still being counted. Ballots were still going to be counted for days. And it was far too early to be making any proclamation like that.
I remember saying that, to the best of my memory, I was saying that we should not go and declare victory until we had a better sense of the numbers.
So that was Jason Miller throwing a drunk Giuliani under the bus, and Billstephen, who was the campaign manager for Trump's 2020 presidential campaign. And so Rudy Giuliani urged him to declare victory prematurely on the night of the election. And according to Miller and Stepien, they were urging him to avoid doing that. Cenk.
Yeah, so there was Team Normal, which were Trump's normal advisors, who, by the way, are not normal. They're massive right wingers, and we disagree with them on every issue, right? So Stepien, the campaign manager that was supposed to show up today, but apparently his wife's in labor. Maybe she is, maybe she isn't. Anyways, he on tape had a lot of devastating things to say, and he was part of Team Normal, which is, hey, we're running a normal campaign here, and we're gonna do everything. They're Republicans, so we're gonna do everything to win before and after the election, but we're not going to say that the ghost of Hugo Chavez stole the election, because that's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Rudy was the leader of Team Cuckoo.
Yep.
And so now everybody's throwing each other under the bus, but really Trump's down to just Team Cuckoo. There's almost no one left. Former White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney went on a Twitter storm today. Here, I'll read you one of them. He said, Trump's inner circle at the end was Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Lin Wood, Peter Navarro, garbage in, garbage out.
I mean, he was also garbage, but in a different way.
Yeah, Mulvaney is an old school, like really terrible corporate Republican, the kind that'll rob you blind, just totally in the pocket of payday lenders, i.e. loan sharks, etc. He's a terrible guy, but it's not terrible guys versus nice guys in the Trump administration. It's people who are attached to reality and detached from reality. Like Mick Mulvaney knows how to rob you, but that's because he's attached to reality. He knows if I do this, I can rob you better and give it to my donors, right? And the other people, Sidney Powell, though, in court documents said no reasonable person would believe that what she was saying were facts. Right. No reasonable person would believe it. But guys, one more thing before I hand back to Anna. Trump has always been detached from reality. What drives me crazy is when you have, it's really what it is the great man myth. Well, if someone is accomplished, someone is president, someone is a billionaire or a millionaire, well, then they must be a great man. So all the talk the press does endlessly about his strategy, never had a strategy. He was always a lunatic. He did the birther conspiracy against Obama. It wasn't a strategy. He genuinely believed it. He genuinely believes that taking a mental competency test shows you that you're a genius if you pass, meaning you're the lowest bar. Otherwise, you have to be put up like into a hospital for mental deficiencies.
And that's a test to determine whether or not an individual has dementia. So he was bragging about passing that test.
He genuinely believes that if you pass the test about dementia, that you're a genius. He's always been this unintelligent and this crazy. It's just after the election, it was on full display. And all of these Trump, everyone here is a Trump supporter. Not supporter, Trump, they worked for Trump, they believed in Trump, etc. And every one of them was put to the test. Are we going to lie and try to steal this election, or are we going to be forced to tell the truth? And that's where we were.
So there's a lot more to get to, including what I would argue is some of the more interesting evidence that's being presented during these hearings. What did his own daughter and son-in-law think about what was transpiring behind the scenes? And so when Giuliani was urging Trump to declare victory on the night of the election before the mail-in ballots had been counted, well, what did Ivanka Trump think about that? What did Jared Kushner think about that? You're about to find out.
I don't know that I had a firm view as to what he should say in that circumstance. The results were still being counted. It was becoming clear that the race would not be called on election night.
Did you ever share, Mr. Kushner, your view of Mr. Giuliani? Did you ever share your perspective about him with the president?
I guess. Yes.
Tell me what you said.
Basically, not the approach I would take if I was you.
Okay, and how did he react? How did President Trump react when you shared that view with him?
We said, I have confidence in Rudy.
I have to say, it is fascinating watching the people closest to Trump, his daughter and son-in-law, try to find ways to answer these questions, knowing that if they answer honestly and tell the truth about what they really thought, how they knew Trump had lost the election, they know that they have to face the wrath of Donald Trump. So they're like, like you could hear them twisting themselves up in pretzels, trying to figure out a way to give the politically correct answer for daddy.
Yeah, and their facial expressions are hilarious. That one happened to be audio, but Kushner was on video in other parts. Kushner always has this look like
totally.
Like he's always about to say, like before he says anything else, I do declare, right? Rudy was a bit intoxicated. Anyway, Zoe Lofgren has the squint of like, is this video gonna play?
Totally.
For each video. So there's some fun parts of this thing too, especially when people are being thrown under the bus, in mass, as they should be, as the team cuckoo, just totally nuts, and the leader of that by far, Trump.
Now, the campaign manager, Billstephen, recounted what it was like to just witness in real time Trump thinking that he had genuinely won the election with all of the evidence countering that. And so in the next video, he recounts the changing result of the election from the night of the election, of course, before the mail-in ballots were counted, to when the mail-in ballots were counted. It went from being in Trump's favor to being in Biden's favor because the Democrats overwhelmingly voted through mail-in ballot. The reason why Republican voters didn't vote through mail-in ballot is because Trump urged them not to. So remember, we're still in the middle of the pandemic at that time, and voters, elderly voters who might vote for Trump, probably didn't show up to the polls because of the risk associated with that, and they didn't vote by mail because Trump told them not to. Now, here's Billstephen, again, the campaign manager for Trump's 2020 campaign, explaining what it was like behind the scenes.
With each day that wore on, I mean, the trajectory of the race on election night, Trump ahead in many states. And as that week wore on, as the third became the fourth, became the fifth, and so on and so forth, and the vote by mail ballots were tabulated, Trump's lead, grew more narrow, and in some places, Biden surpassed Trump in the vote totals. So as the week wore on, as we paid attention to those numbers multiple times a day, internally, I was feeling less confident for sure.
What was your view on the state of the election at that point?
Very, very, very bleak.
Very, very, very bleak. So the idea that the recounts in some states could flip the election to Trump's favor, according to Billstephen, was very slim, very bleak. But it didn't matter for Donald Trump because he went around spouting lies about the 2020 election anyway. And in the next video, you will hear from the White House counsel, Eric Hirschman, essentially telling him, this is insane. You got to cut it out. There's no evidence indicating the election was stolen from you. Let's watch.
Here, for example, is White House lawyer Eric Hirschman. His view was shared by many of the Trump team whom we interviewed.
I thought the Dominion stuff I never saw any evidence whatsoever to sustain those allegations. What they were proposing, I thought was nuts. The theory was also completely nuts. Right, there's a combination of Italians, Germans. Different things have been floating around as to who was involved. Remember, Hugo Chavez and the Venezuelan. She has an affidavit from somebody who says they wrote a software in. It's something with the Philippines, and just all over the radar.
Even Sidney Powell, defending herself in a defamation lawsuit brought by Dominion Voting Systems, argued that, quote, no reasonable person would conclude that her statements were truly statements of fact.
So, Cenk, you have White House counsel telling Trump this is nuts. There's no evidence, supporting any of the claims that are being made by some of the lunatics that you've surrounded yourself with, Sidney Powell being one of them. And then, as you can see in the end of that video, you have Representative Lofgren making note of the defamation lawsuit that was filed against Sidney Powell because of the lies she was telling in regard to Dominion voting systems. And in those court filings, her defense is, well, no one could possibly take me seriously, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, a goofy point and a serious point. We cover these live, and I love having fun with these. So you should always, when the hearings are on, make sure you're turning to us because we'll do play-by-play coverage. So the Billstephen photo is cracking me up, man. This is like a Twilight photo of like him looking like, oh my God, I wonder when I'm gonna get back together with Susie. It looks like the human, can we show it real quick? It looks like the human sad face emoji.
That is a terrible picture.
Okay. So sad. Ooh. Okay, just having fun. All right, back to serious stuff. So guys, of course, one of the questions is this gonna come to anything, right? So remember, the House cannot charge him criminally, a Department of Justice has to. They are just doing an investigation. They're supposed to give you the facts, etc. But like, there's two ways that this trial, these hearings could have gone. One is the normal Democratic way, in which it's just like a mess, a bunch of older Democrats doing word salad that no one can understand and then sending fundraising emails. That's what I was expecting because that's what Democrats do almost every time, right? Or this, which is totally unexpected, a really professional, persuasive, excellent hearings.
Concise.
And yeah, I'm shocked by it.
It's super concise. That's the most shocking part. And the effectiveness of the hearings in terms of anyone who's open-minded and willing, let's say someone on the right, who's open-minded and willing to respond or be receptive to evidence, can't not be swayed by the evidence that's being presented, right? Because you have one Trump campaign official after the next, one White House lawyer after the next, all these people who are very close to Trump, near and dear to Trump, his own daughter, okay, admitting, Biden won the election, my father is insane. Now, obviously she doesn't say that exactly, but it's clear that everyone around him, with the exception of like Sidney Powell and John Eastman and all that, they knew what was going on. They knew Trump had lost his mind, that he was detached from reality. And to me, it's just important to get all of this, Cenk, on the record, right? Because assuming we have a country left in, I don't know, the next couple decades, having this clear record of evidence on the record helps us look back at history and understand exactly what happened.
But the problem, of course, is that it's not just history.
Right.
It's also potentially our future. Like some people say, oh, what are you guys talking about Trump? Are you crazy? If the election were held today, that literal lunatic would be the president.
Yep.
And he would never let go of power. It's super obvious. That was 98% of his own staff saying, Mr. President, we think you might be nuts. Like, this is not at all true. He's like, I don't care. I don't care at all what reality is. Don't care, I'm just gonna do it. The rules, laws, don't care. He's leading right now.
Yep.
40% of the country believes him religiously, even though he's super, and guys, if you're a Republican, just let me ask you this, okay? Do you think that almost every single person that Trump has ever hired is crazy and part of the deep state? Because they've all turned on him, and they're telling you, look, I love the guy. I went in, I'm super right wing. I want to take over the country. I want to do all the things that you want to do. I want to build a wall. I hate immigrants, etc. But the guy cannot connect one thought to another. He's totally gone. So do you think they're all lying, and they're all deep state? And if so, isn't Trump the very worst manager of all time? He just cannot hire anyone who isn't deep state, anyone who isn't an incredible liar, and they all coordinate their lies and tell the same exact story. Or is it possible that they're all telling the truth and the one guy who's lying is Donald Trump? How could you not see that?
So there are a few things at play right now. One of the issues is what we've already discussed on the show, which is we all live in our own bubbles, unfortunately. And so if you're relying solely on right-wing media, it's very likely that a lot of the evidence that we're talking about now, a lot of the news stories, the lost court battles that we're talking about right now, were never aired on the media or printed in the press that the right-wing voters tend to consume. But there's another side of this that I think is super relevant, which is, and I think it's actually a little more damning and terrifying, which is, well, for the people who do know, the Republican voters who do know that Trump lost the election and he's moving forward with these lies anyway, they might not even really care, right? Because when we think about what voters tend to care about the most, it's the issues that impact their day-to-day lives. And right now, what all voters are thinking about is the economy, primarily inflation. They're thinking about their children being out of school for 2 years and how far behind they are. They're thinking about the crime wave. They're thinking about these bread and butter issues that impact them day to day. And something as important as this hearing, and I do say it is important, kind of takes a back seat. And when they think of Trump, they think of a booming economy, even though that economy was built on a house of cards, as we talked about on the show quite a bit.
Yeah, so look, guys, if you're a Republican, can you just pick someone else who's really hateful? I don't care, like really wrong, really hateful. It is what it is. We got to fight you guys in the election, and either you win, we win. In fact, you'll have a better chance of winning. All we're asking is don't pick someone who is certifiably insane, because unfortunately you might win. And I don't want someone insane as president. Like if we lose to like massive right winger, then we lose. But I don't want to endanger the whole world because you want to own the libs by putting someone in from a mental asylum inside the White House again. So last thing for me on this is that, guys, one of the key elements of this hearings is how are Republican officials going to react? Because yeah, if you're in the Newsmax bubble, you might never see any of this and you might not care. But all the Republican Party officials are seeing it, all the donors are seeing it, all the reporters, everybody that is an official Republican of some sort is watching this. Are they gonna walk out and go, yeah, I'm with the crazy person?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, right? Or are they, or some of them, like Asa Hutchinson from Arkansas governor that I talked about this morning, came out and was like, no, we got to pick somebody else. This is crazy, right?
Well, remember Mitch McConnell, who knows full well that, I mean, he believes that Trump incited the riots on January 6th. He was asked point blank, would you vote for Trump if he won the Republican primary in 2024? He said yes.
No, I know. If he wins the primary, that's why I'm asking them to pick someone else, because if he wins the primary, they're all gonna fall in line. They wouldn't care. If Trump came out and was like, and he was in his underwear, etc., and doing jumping jacks, they wouldn't care at all. They'd vote for him over any Democrat. That's why I'm saying in a primary, vicious, I don't mind. I don't mind anything you got, just not insane.
Well, maybe they can take a few notes from the DNC on how to rig a primary against the candidate they don't like.
Yeah, well, look, to be fair to the Republicans, they have real primaries, and the Republican voters definitely picked Trump. And back then, maybe they didn't know, they definitely didn't know he was this crazy. Will they pick him again knowing he's this crazy? Right now, the answer is yes. So that's what, maybe this changes it, but probably not.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.